The Emperor Nero. He fiddled while Rome burned. Butchered Christians.
He has them dressed up in wild animal skins and torn apart limb from limb by wild dogs.
Then turned them into human torches. He killed his wives and squandered money on an enormous scale.
He's bankrupted the empire, he sold the temples, and he's murdered most of the ruling elite.
Using historical accounts from Roman times, it's possible to explore the truth behind these stories. Nero's life is put under the microscope with a range of scientific tests, revealing his sadistic methods of torture and how he pulled off one of history's biggest financial scams, and the part he played in the killing of his wife, his second wife, and his mother. A leading forensic psychiatrist will analyze his character, all to reveal how he ranks alongside other ain'ts behaving badly. Emperor Nero ruled Rome for just 13 years. In that time, he carved out a place for himself as one of history's most notorious tyrants. By the middle of his reign, the very sight of him made Romans tremble.
Nero is certainly psychologically ripe for good evaluation. His life reads a modern-day movie as he tries to square his own desires with the role he's been asked to play, namely Emperor of Rome.
To understand Nero better, psychiatrist David Mallet examines his behavior, attempting to rank him alongside other tyrants in history. From his record, Nero ranks amongst the worst of them. He came to power with the killing of his uncle, the emperor. He laced the wine of his rival stepbrother with a fatal dose of poison.
He has openly committed murder to get what he wants.
He tried to have his mother crushed to death. And when that failed, he had her killed by his guard. He blamed Christians for the burning of Rome and burned them alive in retaliation.
This butchery of these Christians, blamed for the fire of Rome, is so graphic, is so disgusting.
He used whips and branding irons on senators who displeased him, and kicked pregnant wife to death. These shocking stories come from Roman historians Tacitus and Suetonius, writing decades after Nero's death. They're the gossip columnists of their day, demonizing Nero to make their own rulers look good. So how much should we trust them? The search for evidence begins in Nero's childhood. He was born in 37 AD into a very troubled Roman family. His father died when he was just 3 years old, and for a while, his male role model was his uncle Caligula. Nero found little comfort in the bosom of his mother Agrippina, Caligula's little sister. She was struggling with her own demons.
Agrippina's really messed up. She was brutalized and then banished by her brother Caligula. She's basically grown up believing that murder and incest are the norm, and she's perfectly prepared to use them to get what she wants.
Agrippina wanted power, and she planned to use young Nero to help her.
This is the road to Rome, but it's also Agrippina's route to power. Because in ancient Rome, women aren't allowed to wield power. That's a man's job. But Nero can. And with Nero in Rome, Agrippina can pull the strings.
Step 1, get close to power. The beautiful and cunning Agrippina seduced and married the Emperor Claudius, even though he was her uncle.
Agrippina's incestuous marriage with Claudius reviles the people of Rome as it reviles us today. But she was a person who was willing to cross any line to obtain ultimate power.
Agrippina pressured Claudius into adopting Nero and making him heir to the throne ahead of his own son Bricus. Nero became emperor-in-waiting.
Nero is suddenly faced with a tremendous change in his life. He's now in line to become emperor of Rome, something he's never been trained for, something he's not prepared for. Psychologically, it's not at all clear that he wants it. He's thrust into this role as a puppet of Agrippina, his mother.
According to the sources, Agrippina was impatient for power.
Tacitus and Suetonius say Agrippina wants her husband dead. She is very powerful and she knows just use a convicted poisoner, Locusta. It is virtually impossible to slip poison into the food of the emperor. But Agrippina finds a way.
Claudius met his end at a drunken banquet when he ate a dish of poisoned mushrooms. With Claudius out of the way, Nero was crowned emperor. That should have made him the most powerful man in the world. But according to the sources, the real power lay in the manipulative hands of Agrippina. Coins dating from early in Nero's reign reveal crucial clues.
The coin's unusual because it shows the busts of both Nero and his mother Agrippina on the same side. It is very unusual to see both mother and son together, and is indicative of the power of Agrippina, and clearly says that there was something very special about the relationship between mother and son.
How special? They were in effect joint rulers. But soon there was a falling out between mother and son over a woman. (55 AD). Nero, aged 18, fell head over heels for an ex-slave girl, and Agrippina was furious. This could have jeopardized her hold on power, her place on the coin. She tried to break them up, but Nero resisted. Agrippina was forced to demonstrate her power.
Nero's control over Rome is not yet absolutely secure. That's because Claudius had a natural son, and that is Nero's stepbrother, Britannicus. Pushed away by Nero, Agrippina now threatens to replace him on the throne with Britannicus.
Britannicus was just 13. But before she could disown Nero and transfer her allegiance, young Britannicus consumed a cup of wine, collapsed in violent convulsions, and died foaming at the mouth. Nero was quick to claim it was an epileptic fit. After all, epilepsy ran in the family. Uncle Caligula was always having fits. But Suetonius didn't agree. He accused Nero of murder. Could Nero have poisoned Britannicus and got away with it? It's a question for Dr. Timothy Erickson, a toxicologist.
Certainly there were several poisons, many poisons available to poisoners and Nero at that time. There's 3 poisons that come to mind that this could have been. One is a cyanide component commonly found in fruit pits of the day. The other would be strychnine, and finally hemlock.
The sources say Britannicus drank wine diluted with water, and that the poison was in that water. So if Nero did murder, whatever he used had to be undetectable in water. One possibility, cyanide. It's found in peach stuff, but you need a lot of them to make a lethal cocktail.
The effects of cyanide on the human body is very profound. This can be rapidly fatal, but it's all a delivery and making sure it's disguised. And as you can see, even with stirring, it doesn't quite dissolve. So it would have been quite noticeable something was slipped into the drink.
That rules out cyanide. Next, strychnine.
The effects of strychnine on the human body is really quite remarkable. Once it hits the system, the patient starts to have something very dramatic. They're actually having muscle spasms, almost like someone with rabies.
The symptoms match, but strychnine is extremely bitter. Britannicus would have tasted it with the first sip. That leaves hemlock.
Water hemlock, it's most, if not the most toxic plants on the planet. As you can see, it's clear, it's difficult to detect, and water hemlock hits quickly. For Nero's setting and his poisoners, this was the perfect poison to give Britannicus. And what's most demonstrable, what's most famous about water hemlock is that it causes convulsions. It causes seizures, and with seizures, it would be easy for Nero to pass it off as his childhood disorder.
So Nero, perhaps with the poisoner Locusta, could have killed Britannicus. He had the means, the opportunity, and the motive. There's something else that looks suspicious.
Britannicus dies under strange circumstances. Stranger still are the funerary proceedings. They're hasty, they're abrupt, and they take place the next day without much pomp and circumstance, as would have been befitting of a person like Britannicus.
Get rid of the evidence, fast. Historians are convinced that this all points to the fact that Nero did murder his young stepbrother.
Openly committed murder to get what he wants, and that is a big, big step.
With that, Nero moved out of the shadow of his mother Agrippina. She had taught him well. Nothing was going to stop him now. (59 AD). 5 years into his reign, the Emperor Nero made a decision, even for him. He was going to kill his mother. Thrilled Agrippina was the only person standing between him and absolute power. He couldn't just kill her in cold blood. That'd be too much, even for a Roman emperor. Historian Darius explores the scene of the crime.
He has to remain above suspicion. The sources say he makes it look like an accident.
According to the historian Suetonius, Nero planned to kill his mother with a booby trap and make it look like an accident. It was supposed to happen here in the Bay of Naples.
Nero invites mother down from Rome to the festivity of Minerva. It's the perfect cover. And he greets her as she arrives in Baia with great fanfare. And her boat, a craft specially made just for her to view the festivities from. This boat is special because it's rigged. Sounds like a far-fetched story out of a James Bond movie.
The story goes that the boat was rigged with a lead-weighted canopy, fall on Agrippina, crushing her to death. But dropping the canopy at the right time required a release mechanism, and a team of accomplices frightened Nero into keeping their mouths shut. Engineer Paul Swayze and historian Robert Mason are to find out whether contemporary Roman technology could actually have produced a contraption like the one described.
So this would be a good facsimile for a royal barge of Nero's period. The whole aspect of Roman life, it was about hierarchy, and the most important place in the hierarchy was in the bench, where you recline like this. And above her head, this lovely canopy. So all it needs to do is fall on her head, and it's all over. And this is the scene of the crime, right here.
Using the mast as an anchor point, a lead-weighted canopy could be raised directly over Agrippina's head.
The only issue would be how you're off the weight.
The Romans were skilled metalworkers, known to fashion release systems like this.
Here's my mass hanging off the bottom loop. Here's my point of contact, connected to a loop, looping around nose. This slight negative arc holds our loop in position, and when levered from the top, the child could release 1,000 pounds that way.
What you've basically drawn is quite a widespread Roman way of releasing a siege engine.
Ah, yes.
So,
excellent.
So let's do it.
I'm in.
That's the release system. Now for the canopy.
Okay, well, here's our pulley. Trigger. And the next thing we have to do is connect our trigger here. That just barely fits through there, doesn't it? Perfect. Give it a little bit of weight, set it, and hold it in place nicely. I think it'll work.
Historians say Agrippina lay under the booby-trapped canopy Roman couch.
So here we have an imperial couch for an imperial lady to recline upon. Let's see what we can do to Agrippina.
Sandbags simulate the lead weights used by Nero's accomplices. The Romans used elaborate systems in everyday life. Historians say Agrippina survived with only a shoulder injury, confirmed by this demonstration.
That's all the probably would have done to her. The ends of the bench would have stopped her from being more injured than she was.
According to the historian Tacitus, the injured Agrippina swam ashore and fled to the safe villa. Tacitus said she put two and two together and knew Nero was behind the attempt on her life. She decided to try and defuse the situation by sending Nero a message that she believed the collapsing boat was nothing more than an accident.
Nero's waiting in a villa not unlike this. When Agrippina's messenger rushes in and says that there's been an accident, Nero has to react quickly. Here the sources attribute to Nero a quick takes a sword, throws it at the feet of the messenger that's been sent by Agrippina, and says that Agrippina has sent the messenger to kill him.
Nero had the excuse he'd been looking for, an attempted assassination by his mother. Anything he did now could be taken as an act of self-defense.
It's a brilliant move. He goes from villain to the victim.
Nero sent his Praetorian guard to Agrippina's villa to finish the job. Agrippina bared her stomach and told the guards to strike her in the womb that gave life to her killer. They did, and she died.
That night, he is plagued with nightmares. And when he wakes up, Nero announces, "Today is the first day of my rule." He's finally got power. He learned from the best, his mother.
Romans became even more wary of their... If he could kill his mother openly, anyone could be next. Nervous senators sent extravagant messages of thanks and congratulations. With Agrippina out of the way, Nero turned to the next annoyance in his life, his wife Octavia. She was very popular, but Nero didn't care. He only had eyes for his mistress Poppaea, the now pregnant ex-slave girl. He divorced Octavia and banished her from Rome.
he marries his mistress Poppaea. It's a way of severing his final ties with Agrippina. The reaction of the public is one of outrage. They take to the streets. They riot. The people want their fairy tale. Nero has made a fatal PR blunder. It's like Charles divorcing Diana for Camilla.
He decided Octavia needed to be more than divorced. She needed to be dead. He sent his guards to offer her an ultimatum. She could turn life, or they'd do it for her. The guards returned to Rome with the head of Octavia. With that, Nero moved way beyond caring about what the thought.
Nero was now ready to be the man he always wanted to be. And according to Suetonius, that was a poet, an actor, and a musician. Which doesn't sound too bad today, but in ancient Roman terms, it's dynamite. Because in ancient Rome, actors are on the same status as prostitutes. So it would be like the United States today publicly soliciting on Sunset Boulevard. Respectable Romans just don't do that.
So what does this say about Nero's mental state?
Nero has now become emperor of Rome. But rather than just pure power, what he has now achieved is the stage that he has always wanted. He now has the platform. He can fulfill his dream of everybody loving him. He is now literally the center of attention of the world.
Nero's desire for attention had spiraled out of control, just as an historic catastrophe struck. 10 years into his rule, 27-year-old Nero was firmly in charge. Anyone who displeased him didn't last long. No one dared plot against him. When Romans weren't fearing for their lives, they were squirming with embarrassment over his antics on stage. Psychological analysis suggests that Nero just couldn't help himself.
Nero has now become addicted to the crowd. He's totally hooked on adulation. Any amount of it is not enough. This is part of his personality pathology. It shows that deep inside of him, he needs continued love by the crowd. He's become like a rock star, on call 24 hours a day.
The stage set for Nero's most famous role in an appalling event, the Great Fire of Rome.
Ancient Rome was made of wood, and the streets were very narrow, much more narrow than this. Fire could jump from one building to the next very easily, and the stories are fires spread quickly and frequently. The fire of Nero is the most destructive fire ever in Rome. Half of Rome is totally burnt to the ground.
Nero fiddled while Rome burned. It's the myth dogged him through history. But it wasn't a fiddle, it was a lyre, an ancient stringed instrument.
The sources even tell us what song he was singing. It was a lament to the fall of Troy. And you know what? That tells us a great deal. It tells us that he probably did fiddle while Rome burned, but not for the reasons you might suppose. I mean, think about it. He's an artiste. So when faced with this great, glorious city burned to the ground, he probably was moved to pick up his lyre and sing a lament to that other great doomed city, Troy.
It's been seen as the beginning of Nero's descent into madness.
But he's not doing it because he's mad. He's not glorying in the death of Rome. He's mourning it to the depths of his soul. And then, of course, the tabloid hacks get hold of it, and it's a public relations disaster. And all because Nero doesn't realise what it's going to look like to people who don't understand it.
One possibility is to think of Nero as psychotic at this point, but the evidence does not support that. If anything, he's accepted this reality as his shining. The world is in flames around him. He continues to perform. This is the moment that he's been waiting for.
The fire burned for 6 days. Rumors spread that it was arson. Romans demanded justice. Nero quickly found someone to blame. A bunch of religious zealots who'd become an annoyance around the city, the Christians.
The Christians were a gift to Nero because they were a cult on the fringes of society. There were even rumours they ate the flesh and blood of humans, which was probably a misunderstanding of the sacrament of the bread and wine. But what made them deeply suspicious to the Romans was the fact that they refused sacrifice to the cult of the emperor on the grounds that there was only one God. In modern terms, it would be a bit like refusing to swear allegiance to the American flag on the grounds of the image of Satan.
That made them perfect scapegoats.
There were even Christian pamphlets circulating at the time saying that Rome would burn in hellfire for worshipping false gods. And of course, to the Romans, that's like incitement to arson.
Nero ordered Christians rounded up and subjected to a savage form of punishment.
He prefers to use scourging, like whipping, but far worse.
That's because the whip is weighted with spiked balls.
We are going to use this piece of pork to simulate what would happen. Keep in mind that the pork skin is a lot thicker and a lot tougher than a human's skin would be. Look at the depth of injuries that are penetrating all the way down into the actual muscle tissue below the fat layer and all the way through the skin. The individual would suffer a tremendous amount of agony from this type of scourging. This would have completely destroyed their back, torn them right open. You would not be surprised to see fractured shoulder blades, broken as well. Severe bleeding would have set in. The individual would be able to survive several hours of this kind of torture before succumb. Skillful use would be required if you didn't want the individual to die.
It was a common punishment for serious crimes, but Nero used it on a large scale against Christians. It revealed a growing appetite for cruelty, one that led to horrifying public spectacles in the arena.
The Romans are used to bloodshed in the arena. What Nero does to the Christians is excessive. He has them dressed up in wild animal skins and torn apart limb from limb by wild dogs. This is too much for the Romans. This butchery of these Christians, blamed for the fire of Rome, is so graphic, is so disgusting that it moves the public to pity, which is exactly what Nero did not intend.
But Nero no longer cared about public opinion. At night, he had Christians tied to stakes, coated with tar, and set on fire to burn as human torches. In ruins, Nero began rebuilding. But his priority was not the ordinary Roman citizen.
He gives himself an even greater, more magnificent palace that extends from the Palatine Hill in the distance through the valley of the Colosseum all the way over to the Line Hill. And it's highlighted by his Domus Aurea, so famous for the gilding of the structure, on the roofs, on the walls, everywhere. This is not a way to win over the Romans. Sure, he's modernized their city, but he's now taken a huge chunk for himself.
sense of entitlement went beyond any modern excesses.
Nero loves himself. He loves other people of him, but he is not psychotic. He is not insane. There's no evidence that he's hallucinatory or delusional. He continues to be very planful and very goal-directed. Now, those goals are all directed at making him look better, but there's no evidence that this guy is psychotic.
While half the city starved, Nero built a palace until he ran out of money. Nero wouldn't let that stop him. He had a plan. The workhorse of the Roman economy was the denarius, rock solid because it was guaranteed 100% silver.
In antiquity, it was very important for the ordinary person, the man on the street as it were, to have faith in the silver content coin that he was paid in, whether he was a Roman soldier, whether he was a senator, or whether he was just an agricultural labourer.
Historians say Nero found a way to stretch the denarius. He intimidated coin makers at the mint into watering down the silver content. This had been backed up by previous chemical analysis of a denarius from Nero's reign, identified by Nero's face on the coin. That test had shown the coin to be pure. It seemed as if the whole story was an exaggeration. But Dr. Matthew Ponting decided to dig deeper and took the bold move to drill into the interior of one of these precious coins.
The analysis will be able to tell us exactly how much copper was added to debase the silver coinage by Nero, because it's been taken from inside the coin itself, missing any surface layers which would have had their silver content enriched prior to striking.
The sample from inside the coin was passed through an atomic absorption spectrometer to measure the silver content.
We're getting a figure of 170 parts per million on this sample, which calculated back to account for dilution factors gives us a figure of slightly less than 80%. This would have saved imperial administration a significant amount of money.
The other 20% is plain copper. So Nero did debase the Roman currency and use the money for his grand building projects. But if his scam had been exposed, he'd have been lynched. Dr. Ponting has discovered that Nero went to great lengths to hide his tracks, diluting the precious metal content inside the coins, but leaving the surface pure silver.
So it is different to laying on say a silver foil over a base core, which was the technique that was used by forgers to actually forge coins. In this case, it's a much more sophisticated process where you're actually enhancing the surface silver content of the coin only.
Nero's audacious gamble with the Roman currency was without precedent.
For the first time, we see a systematic and quite serious debasement of the silver content of the major silver of the Roman Empire, the silver denarius.
He was completely out of control. A group of senators gathered to plot an assassination attempt.
This is the Curia. This is the meeting place of the senators, and they have a conspiracy. They are discussing removing the emperor. They want him gone, they want him. But Nero is up for the fight. Nero is ready to strike back, having been prepared by his mother to defend himself. And he does so brutally, he does so rapidly, and he does so successfully.
They faced Nero's wrath. Culprits were branded, scourged, torn apart, and finally killed. No one was safe around Nero, not even his new wife.
We're here in a part of Nero's palace on the Palatine Hill. One night, Nero's home. And he has a bit of a row with his wife. Poppaea is pregnant with their second child. And she's complaining bitterly that Nero is spending too much time at the games. Too many races. And in a fit of rage, Nero reacts. Nero kicks her to death, killing her and their unborn child.
Nero gave up any pretense of running the empire and set off to Greece to explore his creative side.
Artistic competitions are a big thing in ancient Greece, and Nero throws himself wholeheartedly into the competition circuit. It's hardly surprising that he wins every award going. I mean, they give him prizes, competitions he didn't even take part in. And Suetonius says he won 1,808 awards, but that would be 5 awards a day for an entire year, which sounds pretty unbelievable to me.
On his return, rebellion was in the air. The Roman Senate passed a resolution declaring him an enemy of the state. Nero's luck had finally run out. Nero's mismanagement of the empire and the bloody murder of powerful figures in Rome had finally been his undoing. His last allies deserted him.
Nero's out of options. He's bankrupted the empire, he's sacked all the temples, and he's murdered most of the ruling elite. His only option left is to commit suicide by falling sword. His last words were supposed to have been, "Oh, what an artiste dies in me," which would only be fitting. In fact, he's an artiste, that he can't even do that properly, and he needs a companion to help him kill himself.
A freed slave helped Nero with the final deed. The curtain fell for the last time. Nero, 30 years old.
At the news of Nero's death, there is public rejoicing. But very quickly, that rejoicing, that celebration becomes anger.
Romans didn't just want him dead. They wanted all trace of him obliterated. For the first time, they passed a new law to wipe him from history, called a damnatio memoriae.
At the news of Nero, the Senate took immediate action. Damnatio memoriae. They wanted to condemn his existence. They wanted to condemn the fact that he had ever been a ruler of Rome. So they carve out his names, they toss a statue, and he will cease to exist.
Ironically, when later rulers wanted to make their princes look bad, they made an example of Nero because of his terrible crimes. So writers like Suetonius made absolutely certain that he'd never be forgotten. He poisoned his stepbrother, had his mother killed, had one wife beheaded, and kicked another to death while pregnant, used the scourge on Christians and turned them into human torches. He killed senators and stole from every Roman by tampering with their coinage. This placed Nero on the scale of ancients behaving badly. He didn't torture and kill for the thrill of it, like his uncle Caligula. He had goals. He killed for personal or political gain, like Julius Caesar.
when he does use violence, and it's a very directed administrative sense, he does not have the bloodlust that a number of the other famous Roman rulers had.
But beating his pregnant wife to death in an uncontrollable rage moves him along the scale towards the psychotic. And what about his need to be the center of attention?
The major personality trait of Nero is this histrionics, of having a histrionic personality disorder. The theatricality and superficiality, that need, that craving for attention is going to really drive his personality.
On this scale, Nero rates very highly. So history has a similar personality profile.
When I compare Nero to a modern day or more recent historic figure, I'd be looking for somebody who, like Nero, needed the stage. He needed the crowds and adulation. He needed himself to be the center of attention. At the same time, I would be looking at somebody ruthless and immoral. We can look no further than a recent ruler of Italy, Benito Mussolini.
Mussolini was a dictator with a big ego, a streak of cruelty, and a flair for the dramatic. Romans celebrated Nero's suicide, but not for long. Rumors soon spread that Nero was still alive. He'd been spotted singing and playing music. This is a familiar delusion.
Think of today Elvis. Elvis disappears. Elvis is dead, but there are sightings. And then a lot of people over time believe it. And a lot of people today still believe he is alive. And that kind of lives on with Nero. That much of an impact did he have on Roman society.
Nero's ultimate desire was to be remembered as a great artist. But disturbed mother and his extreme self-obsession ensured that his 13 years in power is remembered not as an artistic golden age, but the reign of a ruthless tyrant and murderer.